Okay, guys, welcome back. Sorry about that. We are just about to go live again. Hello, welcome back, guys.
Hi, Jen. Thank
Hey,
you.
how are
Apologies for
you?
being a little too late.
That's okay. I was just plugging my own moon book in the meantime.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was listening for quite like 1 minute or so. Interesting. Yeah, I got a list of
Oh,
books that we can discuss, and some interesting documentaries on Gaia, which is super cool too.
ooh, I'm excited. I'm very excited to hear your book recommendations because I think that we read pretty different types of books. So I think there's going to be a lot of good
Yeah,
stuff
super
on the list for me.
curious. So you started?
Well, I just was telling them about my moon book, which I published. So, but they already know about that. I tell them about it all the time. So, also, you did read Journey of Souls, right?
Yeah, I started with Journey of Souls because you recommended it to me, and I started with Dolores Cannon's book, Keepers of the Garden, because you actually recommended that to me as well, and the community too. So a lot of people were talking about it, and so yeah, I started both.
Oh, I love it. So when you are done with Journey of Souls, I have so many questions about what you think about that because I obviously have seen what you've said in interviews is a little different than a lot of the information that's in that book. I don't think it really contradicts each other. I think that they both kind of can coexist, the two types of information. It's just kind of, it seems like a different perception.
Yeah,
of what's
100%.
going on.
So I think that, so I'm basically in chapter 6 right now, so I got a lot, to read. And I'm, simultaneously reading 3 books right now. So basically, I think that they haven't revealed what that species is, but I would say that they definitely are in some kind of way related to the Greys. There are some things that are different, but there's a lot of similarities. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and with Dolores's work, they never really specify a species throughout really all of her different work, but the voice that comes through the subconscious mind is kind of the same from person to person throughout her books. So a lot of what she talks about is that it's actually kind of like an oversoul that's talking. So sometimes different parts of information will come through from some other species.
That's super interesting, actually. I think I need to adjust my lights. Yeah.
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 Drifting to the side.
So basically, yeah, I'm pretty curious about that book actually, and I think I really enjoy that method. And Sarah Brestman Carson told me that she's doing the same method, and maybe this is, by the way, the moment to tell people about the live meditation that we're doing on 23rd of March, and Sarah will be with us too. So super honored, super cool.
I know, guys, that's super exciting. So we're doing another meditation similar to what we did on the 3rd, which was the All Shift Happily Now meditation. And anyone who didn't see my post yet, we're actually going to split the meditation into 2 groups to kind of work with 2 different sides to spirituality. There's some people who resonate a little bit more on the galactic level, and they like the galactic codes, the light language, and those type of activations. And then there's other people who kind of prefer a little bit more of a guided visualization where they can kind of use their own mind to shape the what they're experiencing. So we decided it would just be best if we did them both at the same time with the same thing so that everyone can kind of get fully immersive in what they feel comfortable doing. Because say the people who just want the activations might not want to visualize, and the people who want to do visualization might not resonate with the light language. So we have something.
That's so cool. I'm super. I'm enjoying that, and what a joyful journey so far. So yeah, all shift happily now. So cool.
Which, by the way, I don't think you've seen this, but this was from my Earth Shift series. I did actually make a shirt that said All Shift, Earth Shift Happily Now. It was a part of the Earth Shift series. This was before you said all
Oh,
shifts
that's so
happen,
beautiful.
by the way.
I enjoy that so much. I can't describe, words can't put that into, in form. It's so beautiful. People are doing those chains, those jewelries, t-shirts. The one thing that I really enjoy the most is when, parents, moms and dads get the little children to do the meditation with them, and that's so beautiful. That's such a bold move for a parent to do that. So thanks to everyone in the community, and I'm so grateful, really, really grateful.
And when you get further down your Dolores Cannon journey, you'll see in 3 Waves of Volunteers, she does talk a lot about that basically these souls came down in 3 different waves so that the people who are children right now could have basically the circumstances that they need in order to bring their gift to the world. So it's been basically since World War II that these souls have been coming down in groups to like set the tone for the next generation to be able to, the people that came down in, well, by came down, I mean, be born in the 50s, those like original yoga teachers and stuff, they basically set the wave for people who were born in the 80s. And then the people who were born in the 80s basically have transformed a lot of things to make it for the people who were born in the 2000s to truly allow their spiritual gifts to come through. So it's been this process that started, what she says, which has come through all of these, through her work. Creepers of the Garden is early on in her career. Those things happened in the 80s, and she lived until 2014. So in her later work, it becomes more clear what was happening with the waves. But it's for these children who have these special gifts to basically be setting the stage for them over the course of all these years. It was like a long
That's super
plan.
interesting. So basically in those projects, when we communicated with Being Six, they told us that they have incarnated with 300 to 500 millions of their own species on this planet. And we talked about that you go through this kind of circle of forgetting but remembering. And I feel like this is so incredible, like 500 million people on this planet having, coming from this profound reality field. Super interesting. And thank you for the recommendation. Don't spoil me.
I have many more. Okay, so people know my book recommendations because I literally say them in almost every video. So can you tell us what your favorite books are? Fiction or nonfiction, whatever.
Oh, interesting. So basically, I've in my whole life, I think I've only read like 2 fictionist books. Actually, I'm not a big fan of novels or something. So yeah, that's the thing. But I really enjoy those books that have some kind of knowledge, just as much as you do. I feel there's a lot of similarities to that. So I basically also, I've never ever touched a book on ufology before. So before I started this journey, I did once in my lifetime when I was still involved with things. And the book was so crappy. It was full of wrong information. So people don't ask. I'm not going to tell which book it was, but it got me so furious. I really did an Amazon review. And stuff, and I never ever touched a ufology book in my life again. And then I happened to be on this incredible journey, and I met all those people, and I actually met the journalist that interviewed, was the last one, I guess, to interview Colonel Corso. Do you know Colonel Corso and his book? Oh my God! Oh, that's so cool. That's so incredible. Give me a sec. I think I have the book on my shelf down there. Wait.
Okay. I'm gonna write it down.
Oh yeah, I do. Okay, so here I'm again. So, okay, it's incredible. So I got the German version, and I got some notes, as you can see, just because I was so curious. And this is the one book I actually started reading day after Roswell. Exactly. So basically, this is written by Colonel Philip Corso, who was in the, I don't know, was he in the, I think he was in the Air Force. And he's actually one of those people who came into contact with the beings that they found 1947 in Roswell. And he was a colonel. He was he was then. I got so many notes. It's incredible. So basically, he was commissioned to analyze all the stuff that they found in the UFO, and what they found was fiber glass, cables. They found night goggles, incredible material. So this is all, 1947, Roswell. So basically what happened was that they had this crash, these 2 or 3 gray creatures, which weren't grays, but probably even. So one of them stayed alive. He's even talking about that. Fiber optics, thank you. I'm reading the German one. So this is so incredible. I love it. It was so hard to get this copy actually in the German version. I think the English version is much more popular. So it's mind blowing. It's the one book that I started reading after the reporter, the journalist who did the interview, talked about it. Doty talked about it. Richard Doty, who's an Air Force special agent who worked at Area 51. We talked a lot about it.
I think he was a counterintelligence agent,
in the
right?
Air Force field of intelligence. I don't know. People got to look it up. So basically, he was talking about that book too, because he was in Area 51. He was stationed there. He did. What book is Tim talking about? I'm talking about Day After Roswell, written by Colonel Philip J. Corso, and it's incredible. I read it to my parents on Christmas 2 years ago, and it was fun. It was so fun. So yeah, this is the first recommendation I can give to you, and I'm kind of surprised you haven't read that book actually.
Well, we did talk about this a little bit once, is that there's kind of like different communities within the alien side of things, and the UFO people, the starseed spiritual people, and the more technical insider government people are kind of broken into those 3 groups. So a lot of the information that I actually read is more in that middle group of the channeled from aliens as opposed to the reports. Okay.
Oh, that's interesting. So we basically have this kind of bias where I totally resonate with people who worked in the fields and have written those books. So incredible, cool. So yeah, I can definitely recommend that book. It's super interesting. It tells you a lot about the way that people were thinking about these encounters. So there seemed to be lots of fear, falsely manlyhood, super interesting, and all the inventions that they got from that. So basically, Colonel Corso, what he did was giving all those weird technical parts to different groups, agencies, corporations, and they were analyzing that and trying to implement it into modern technology. And basically, we wouldn't have the LED, we wouldn't have the internet just as we have it. We wouldn't have the night goggle, night vision. We wouldn't have that if 1947.
And I've heard that also. We really wouldn't even have television in the way that we do, because it was right after Roswell that started getting developed.
Is that true? Because I mean,
I saw that in a documentary that's what basically led to this whole TV revolution.
Oh, interesting.
After that.
I thought that the Germans had televisions in the 30s, haven't they? We need to look that up.
Or maybe it's color television then. Maybe it helped to develop color
for sure.
television.
So yeah, basically that's super interesting. All this kind of stuff. Do you want to?
But I think Germans had everything first too, right? I mean, that goes for most inventions. They had it first.
I only understand half of the sentence. What did you say?
I said that, you said that Germans probably already had television. I was like, I think Germans had a lot of things first. A lot of things were already developed there before.
That's especially interesting because he's talking about all those Germans that they paperclipped into the United States, basically. They were quite advanced at that time already. So the US has learned a lot from those information. But that's...
So I do have a book that also, this is a little bit of a controversial book. I wasn't going to mention it today, but because you were talking about Ebens and all of that stuff, actually, as a lot of people know this book, Behold the Pale Horse, it's a very controversial book. Can't say that everything in this book is true, but there are, and this was published in like 1996 because it was a Air Force intelligence officer who based a lot of stuff on classified documents, and then and this basically goes through everything, alien-related stuff, but pretty much every government potential conspiracy that could happen. And the original copy is pretty much impossible to find. So these are like reprints. The original copy are very rare and really
interesting.
expensive.
So is it like first-hand information? Did they chat? Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Well, it's basically from his level of clearance, the documents that he got to read after he was done working for the government. He went full-blown, like, I'm going to tell everyone all of this information, and he was killed. But so the book is very infamous, and the book also actually is very in like original like 90s hip-hop culture was actually really huge because there's a lot of racial related conspiracies towards Black communities that were discussed in this book that are now being talked about, but in this book they were talking about it. So people like Tupac and all of these like huge rappers in the 90s loved this guy William Cooper who wrote this book because he was one of the only people.
Oh, that's interesting. I think I've read an article about the history of hip-hop, that it used to be like a way to transport knowledge to people. I think they called them the 5% or something. Chat, correct me if it was different. Very interesting. Through mainstream and all this capitalism, it transformed into this superficial kind of hip hop that we have today, talking about popping bottles at the club. That's gonna be a meme someday. Interesting. Enjoy that. Okay, the next book that I have is, let me see, it's non-UFO related, but it's Walter Russell. Walter Russell it's a short read. It's a brief read, like you can see that. I don't even know what's. Here's the American title is "The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe." The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, Walter Russell, and it's amazing. It's more or less like a biography of that guy, Walter Russell, and he had this famous quote that he said, "The genius is in everyone." that's, you know, translated from German, might be different in your language. So basically what he said was, when you tap into this enormous field of intelligence, then you can develop all those different skills and abilities. And he was 100% true to that. He lived that. He was basically incredible man. He did architecture. He invented styles of architecture. He did music. He wrote literature. He was doing. He was one of those guys who was commissioned to actually, you know, create a statue of the president of the United States back at that time, and he has never ever done that. So he just tapped into this field of the universe and taught himself how to do it. And the first statue that he ever did, he actually was the guy who was, he should organize it, but the other artist, I don't know, he didn't have the time. So basically when it came up to the moment when the president should be transformed into a statue, he was like, I'm gonna do the job. And he took that for the first time in his life, and he done a genius work of art. And he's also painting and doing all those incredible things. And yeah, so basically he also wrote one, he wrote a very, very thick book about everything that he knew and learned about the universe and how to tap into that field. And he sent it over to Nikola Tesla at that time. Yeah, and Tesla said, Tesla himself was so impressed by what he read that he said, put it into a safe and let it there for 1,000 years because humanity is not ready to read that. So that's Walter Russell. I'm a huge fan of that guy.
Wow. Well, maybe his estimate was a little bit off. We did like 100 years. I think 100 years we're getting there.
That's true. That's true.
That reminds me of two books. Let's see, where are they? Stalking the Wild Pendulum.
Somebody asked, what's the name again? It's Walter Russell, the man who tapped the secrets. I'm sorry, Jen. Sorry, continue.
Don't worry. That book reminds me of Stalking the Wild Pendulum, which is kind of similar, actually. It's called The Mechanics of Consciousness. And there's a theme here. This person was killed shortly after this book came out. There's a theme on what I'm suggesting here. So it was not intentional. But this is actually really good. The reason I found out about this book is because it was in a bunch of declassified documents where they talk about the holographic. You know, there was like some people who found in classified documents that basically we live in a hologram concept. And all of that stuff actually is coming from excerpts from this book. So this book is so difficult to read. I can just do like little parts of it and then come back months later and do another part. But it's really interesting because it really breaks down every aspect of consciousness that we see in all the other books, but just in like a very
so like in a scientific way, or why is it so complicated to read?
Well, it's kind of in between because it's very technical, but what he's talking about is completely on the side of consciousness. So it's kind of written like in the style that it would be if it was scientific, but a lot of the information is like these very large concepts. So it's just a little, and I think it's pretty, it's kind of like the fundamental stuff. So a lot of like the ground level stuff, not like the higher concepts that are fun. You know, it's like a lot of like the general baseline information of like reality, consciousness. Basically, it's a lot of stuff too that also in quantum physics has been discovered since then, but it was a bit different terminology because I think this book is from the 70s.
That's interesting. That's good. That's like a lot of good books come from the 70s, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like all this incredible music and stuff is coming from the 70s, and the 1920s, which is also like it's cyclically. It seems to be cyclically. Super interesting. Let me see. Okay, you mentioned the 1970s, so I'm gonna go with that. So I have a spiritual book, which is Jnana Yoga from Swami Vivekananda. I think a lot of people who are into this kind of stuff, spiritual stuff, they might know at least him, maybe even this book. And I found that so revealing because it's such a spiritual way to describe the universe. And for me, it was, opening up. When I first read that, I was still involved with all this advanced groups and understanding of how the universe works like that, but I wasn't super deep into the spiritual side of it. And I found that very interesting. So basically, this was my introduction to yoga, basically. So it's super interesting to read. Do you want to continue? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. My regular recommendations, as always, Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls. Once again, always, everyone should read them. Even if there is a lot more to the story than what is presented in those books, they're just so helpful because it really goes through the process that happens on the other side with selecting your life. And it really, when I learned about those books, I was going through like a difficult life transition, and it just made me, before reading those books, I had found myself comparing my life to other people's lives. But then after reading those books, I feel like there's no purpose in doing that because actually, you shouldn't really be envious of people who have seemingly easier lives than you, because when you really look at these things, you are just signing up for a harder class. So that's like going to college and being jealous of a kindergartner.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, it just doesn't make sense. It's like, so I think that these are really important for people on like an emotional level, more than understanding the whole secrets of the universe. Because on an emotional level, it just gives a lot of very comforting, practical explanations to a lot of things that are around us, like the concept of good and evil, the concept of hell and heaven. And that basically on the other side, you're going, just like here, you're going to be around the energy that's similar to you. You go to the other side, you're going to be around the energy that's similar to you. So, if you're in a place where you're refusing to heal, you're going to be surrounded by other people who are refusing to heal. That could be hellish, but it's not hell. It's actually just you're congregating around similar types of energy. And it also talks about kind of like the process of being hurt by other people too, which is another thing that sometimes, we cannot fathom. Why someone would do bad things, why someone would hurt another person. But with that, when you really see that beforehand, before life and afterlife, those two souls or two aspects of a soul, they basically had a whole discussion about like, this would be the easiest way for us to go about doing this. Because if we try to learn it on this side, where we're all knowing, where you would never do something bad to another person because you know exactly how it feels to be them, because you could tap into them, you would never do something wrong. So how about we erase all of our knowingness and see on a real soul level, if it really comes down to it, would we still treat people good? Would we still walk the same path? So I think it's emotionally freeing, and
yeah, I think so too. So I basically started, thanks Jen, with that book. And I think there's a German book that's called, I don't know if it's German, but I only know the German title, which translates to I Have Already Lived, Mama, I think. I don't know if it's existing in the English language. So basically, they're doing mostly the same thing with children in modern times, and they are telling the stories about their previous lives. And in that book, they even go and do the research. Like this one child is describing where it died, and they even, they found some dead body that went missing like 50 years ago from that book. So it's super interesting, yeah. And also one thing that I found super interesting, what you said is that you're replicating your own experience. And I think that's super important to understand that, because a lot of people are, they have this inner strive towards a higher dimension. And yes, there are incredible, wonderful frequencies in this universe, but mainly just changing the dimension and coming like into a higher dimension, you would basically have the same experience that you have right now, at least until you change, until you gradually become a different being and project that outside. So I found that super interesting. So yes, thank you very much for recommending that book. Actually, I'm gonna let you know when I finished it.
I know, I have so many questions. We should do a live at the end when you're done reading it and when I'm done posting the Soul series. And then
100%.
I have questions.
Again, I'm super enjoying those formats actually, and I'm constantly also reading the comments. I'm super grateful for the community, and I think we're gonna put the book titles into, I don't know, whenever we're gonna post this, we're gonna put them into the description so people can see them too.
I'm taking notes of yours.
Okay,
and I already know what mine are, so I
thank you. You're really organized. Wow. Okay.
Only certain things.
So basically, I have a book that a lot of people might not know, but I think it's super interesting to read too, because I don't know the English title. It's if it's down, if it's somewhere. Oh, Thinking in Numbers. Okay, so basically the book is Daniel Tammet. People were asking me about a book recommendation, and I think Daniel Tammet is super interesting guy. The original title is Thinking in Numbers by Daniel Tammet. This fella down here, he looks a little nerdy, if I may say that, and he might be, because he's actually since he's born, he seems to have this autistic features that make him super involved with numbers. Thinking in Numbers, Daniel Tammet, right? Thank you, Mika, by the way. Hi. So this guy, I think he's holding the record of reciting all the prime numbers, at least to, I don't know which number. So he's also interesting because the way he perceives the world, and he's talking about language, for example, and he sees all these patterns in language, which I found in my studies super interesting. Always something that refers to a direction, like string or street or you name it. And it's the same thing in German, by the way. So we basically, it gave me the impression, and I found that in my own studies, a lot of evidence and proof to that, that the way we use vocal sounds, there's a deeper level of understanding to the fabric of reality in the way we use those sounds. And people, have forgotten about that a lot. Like they change those, especially with the language that we have nowadays, that is so marketing related and brand related. But again, I really understand tapping into people's minds and seeing how they perceive the universe. And if you want to, then Daniel Tammet has a incredible, interesting mind to read.
Wow. Oh, that's really interesting. And I did hear you say it might have been maybe in your interview with Linda Moulton Howe that you were talking about language. I think it was that, or maybe your interview with Regina. where you said most of the new words that are being introduced into language are only products and brands. And I actually never thought about that, but it's true. I mean, most of it. And then the rare exception here in the US, the new language that we use is either that or slang words that are basically just words that are being used in a new way.
That's true. So basically, so there's a whole, so I did a lot of studies on that subject, and you know, there's whole theory that a species evolves through its own language. So even in, you girls make me laugh. Okay. So basically, there's this theory that everything evolves around language. Even in mainstream science, we have this understanding that we couldn't even think without language in that perspective, you know. So basically, the way we evolve around language shows how much our consciousness evolves. And absolutely right. This human species only has invented new words for products. It's brandings, and they're doing quite a good job on that, you know. But that's not all. So I love that topic, and I think the more we tap into language, we need to understand that we went to some malevolent evolution of language, and we need to redo that. We need to redo that, and also invent something, you know. Make up your own language. Maybe that's something that can help too.
So it's interesting. This reminds me of an interview that I saw on Jeffrey Mishlov's show. In like an old episode from the 80s. I think it's called Thinking Aloud. I think you can also watch those old episodes on Gaia. If you search for Thinking Aloud, I think they licensed the old episodes from the 80s. You could see it on the app. I don't remember who the author was, but he specializes in language. And a really interesting theory that he proposed was that basically, as far as we know, 5,000 years ago, that's when like written language began. And he says that that's actually the time where the image of God shifted from a woman to a man. And they say that before that, because it wasn't written language, they were using the right brain, which is the feminine aspect of the brain. And that's why they saw God as a woman. And also that's why women were regarded differently. When written language started, it basically started activating more of the left brain, less value towards the right brain. This is when women were brought down in society. And they said that the next time there's like kind of a little bit of a women's revolution was during the Dark Ages, when majority of people in Europe couldn't read. So once people were not able to read again, that's when they started bringing up like the image of the Virgin Mary and all of these like feminine idols again, because then the next wave of a women's revolution was, you know, at least that he mentioned, was in the US with women's suffrage and the right to vote and all of that. That was the same time that photography was invented and started being used. So once communication started coming back towards imagery, women had another wave. And then now women's next revolution is when primarily our language is happening through video, photos, Instagram, social media, and a lot less written language. And this is why women are coming up again. So it's a pretty interesting concept, because also, you know, there is this concept of duality where basically we're split into two, and these two things are kind of trying to find balance with each other. So it's pretty interesting that we see whenever language goes either further away from being written as the main source, that's also when women rise in
that's
culture.
Interesting. Yeah, it's true. So basically, think about of that. If you have the ability to change the way people use language, you totally change everything. So what we see is that there's some kind of, you know, malevolent point where language has been altered in that way. So basically all the structures that we now have on this planet, they're all coming from language at some point, and from our understanding of how language must be, which is totally wrong, because language is evolving too. So yeah, and the concept about women and man and the masculine, female aspects of God, it's very interesting. I would say it's pretty much true that at some point there's this kind of change where the masculine and even being six is talking about that we have this imbalance of female and masculine presence, where the masculine is I know it's hard to bear for every man out there listening to us, but basically this thought that we might not be enough because we cannot love as much, presumably as much as a woman or a mother can love its child, because it comes from their own womb, and that kind of matter is causing this psychological pattern of man going out and trying to achieve something. So basically we see that all the achievers, if you want to ironically call that, they are predominantly masculine. You have a lot of toxic male groups out there. Interestingly enough, not those people who are basically protesting for the climate right now. They are like 80% women, which I find is I thought about that yesterday, and I'm super impressed by that, basically.
And also what you're saying does apply to women now in the modern world too, because the same type of pattern, women are kind of adopting a lot of masculine patterns to achieve in the world. So it's that same type of thing where actually a lot of the women that are achieving are suffering from the same thing of having to really like kind of shut down that part of themselves in order to even just maintain in this like structure of society.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think, I mean, we could do a whole show about that actually, which we should do basically. But you mentioned gaia, and I want to take the chance, because let me see how oh man, okay, time is rushing by. So basically I wanted to talk with you about some of the gaia stuff that's out there, because I think gaia, with they have 8,000 titles of different knowledge-based content, movie shows, documentaries, interviews, and I thought like we could also share some of their titles. And basically one of them is again, this is coming from my interest. It's Third Eye Spies, which is do you know that documentary?
I've seen it pop up.
Oh, you should. It's super interesting. So basically, it's about the group around Uri Geller and those people at Stanford that were researching psychic phenomena, and they were using that. I mean the CIA and different other military. Ingo Swann, yes, absolutely. Thank you, Brian. So basically they are using that in order to get knowledge from the Russians at that Cold War area, and Uri Geller was one of them. Russell Targ, thank you, was one of them. They're all included. They even talk about the UFO crash in 1947. They and at the end of the documentary they're like, oh, by the way, we even had a crash site and they found real life aliens. Just at the end, it's like the documentary is over. Let's just put it out there. So super interesting. And I'm basically, which I'm super honored. I'm basically invited to Uri Geller in 2 weeks in Israel. I don't know if I'm going, because the situation in Israel is a little chaotic right now, and I'm hoping that they will integrate that in a good way. So, but basically, it's all around Uri Geller and these people that have come up with the Third Eye Spies. Super interesting documentary.
Oh, that's super cool. And so it's not a series; it's a full.
Yeah. Yes, it's a full documentary. It's a movie, and I think it's not even exclusively on Gaia. You might find it on Amazon Prime as well, but it's very worth watching. Yeah. What about you?
many. Most of my suggestions are Gaia originals. Of course, Cosmic Disclosure, as you guys all know already and love. They just came out with a new insider yesterday. So, or just 2 days ago, there was a new insider. I think his name is John Ramirez. He's a former CIA agent from Air Force Intelligence. I didn't get to watch that episode yet. Also Regina's show, Open Minds, that you were also on. So everybody should watch Tim's episode. But there is so many good episodes. Regina has interviewed everyone.
Sarah too. Yeah.
Regina, yeah, she's in this book as one of Dolores's clients. Okay. So you can actually read Regina's past life regression in Dolores's book. I forget which chapter it is because I didn't find out it was Regina until after I read it. But also Barbara Lamb is in this book, and I believe George Norrie has one in one of her books too, but she doesn't identify them. But all of these OGs
right now.
Well, they later on have said it, but Dolores keeps everyone anonymous because it is such intimate information that comes out under someone's hypnosis. But also, you guys should watch the Regina episode with Julia Cannon. She has an episode with Sarah Brexman Cosme, who's going to be joining us in the meditation. I love her interviews with Lee Harris. Everyone should watch her interviews with Lee Harris. They're so good.
And I think Kadrich is on Kadrich Olsen. He's also with us in the second group that we're doing. So basically, shout out to Mika. He's an expert in runes and this kind of stuff. And he's on George Norrie, and he's incredible. I love that. I met him on Gaia, and I completely forgot who he was because I saw him on television, and weirdly enough, sometimes when you meet those characters, you don't recognize them. So he basically came to me and said, "Hi, I'm Kadrich. I'm very interested in what you're doing. Thank you so much. I love German and the culture as well." And thought yeah, interesting. And then I remembered I saw him on George Norrie and it was mind blowing. I really enjoyed him so much. So shout out to.
And he's the newest episode of Regina's
show.
I
just knew that
this week. So, and that's what everyone's talking about, the shadow work, which is really good. That episode, it starts off with Regina kind of saying she doesn't really get the shadow at all. I don't know. I don't have one. It's not there. And she's really adamant in the beginning that she has nothing to do with anything shadow. But as Kedrick keeps talking, she's like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm just denying it." She was and she comes around and she's like, "Oh, of course, shadow. This is ridiculous." So that's always good when people can kind of teach the host something too. It's called Open Minds, the show.
Open Minds. Yeah, and there's also a new episode or a new series on deep space, which I just recently started, and I happen to be a part of it too. So I'm very honored. And also our friend Johnny Enoch, he's also there, speaking about certain things. You talked to me about it yesterday because you saw it, right?
I did. I saw both.
Yeah, I'm midway through, but it's super good. So I know the producer Sid Goldberg. He's a 2-time Emmy Award-winning producer who works for Gaia, and he's incredible. Really love him. He's such a character, such a beautiful mind, and he's doing incredible work.
The new season is so good. They really stepped it up for this season a lot. Also, aside from Tim, Marina Jacobi is in the episode, which you guys know I featured a lot of her work in my Earthshift series. Also, Debbie Solaris, which I know a lot of you guys love as well, and I put her in my Alien AD series. So really, it's the star-studded cast for us people on this side of things.
Yeah, it's true. So basically, I have two other recommendations, which are the one is it's two documentaries. The one is kind of odd, but I still love it because it's Bufo Alvarius, which is talking about the Mio DMT frog that they use. Where they lick on the frog. It's kind of giving this I don't know, when it gets stressed, it releases some 5-Mio DMT or something, and I've no idea how that works, but they feature.
I think you have to burn it into yourself.
I don't know. I think in the native culture, so maybe the chat knows. So people, if you know how to use it, apply it, you might enlighten us. So basically,
yeah,
secretions.
It's secretions.
I think they lick on it, but I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure they burn you and they stick it in the wound.
Okay, I don't know. So the interesting thing is that they got Dr. Stanislav Grof on that documentary, and unfortunately it's only subtitled because he's talking Czech. But he's one of those psychologists that started the LSD therapy in the 70s, and it's incredible. It's so cool because he underwent all those. He brought LSD into the scientific research, and that's what makes all his books, by the way, super interesting. I think he has this book. Which I do have, it's called Impossible. I do have it on my shelf. So it's Stanislav Grof, Impossible. He's collecting all these weird coincidences through his lifetime. Super interesting, and the visuals are incredible. And the last thing that I want to recommend is Superhuman, which is fairly new. I forgot who the producer is, but she again she's going through different scientific experiments how to prove that our mind is 100% connected with the reality we create. And this is again for our beautiful mass meditation on 23rd of March. This is like, if you want to prepare for something, watch this documentary, Superhuman on Gaia. You can basically see how your mind works. Lovely.
That's awesome. I never really watched the longer form stuff on Gaia, so I have to get into that. A lot of the stuff that you suggested is more documentary.
That's interesting.
Style.
So I'm only watching the documentaries and the yoga stuff as well. I love that too. But I'm mostly into the documentaries, which I love so much.
I have a couple suggestions before we go. I want to mention interviews with EDs, Extra Dimensionals. That's Ruben Langdon's show. He's also going to be joining us on the group meditation. I believe he's going to be on the Venturing Beyond side. So you guys need to watch his show. There's so much information. It's really incredible. He gets different channelers and he interviews them. And the information that comes through these channelers is so complex. There's times I go back and rewatch these videos and they're like still mind-blowing second, third, fourth time. So go through and see what kind of resonates with you, because he interviews all different types of people who have all different types of star origin and different connections with their channeling. So that was also how I found out about Elizabeth April. He had interviewed her. That's how I ended up finding out about her work. Also, you guys should watch the David Icke show, Escape the Matrix. It's very well done. David Icke obviously gets dragged through the mud, but if he actually has enough time to finish a sentence and it's not just a sound bite and you actually get to see all that he has to say, it's actually really helpful information.
Can I add something to David Icke? Because I think that Sid Goldberg, again, he's the one who produced it. But David Icke, I don't want to talk too much about David Icke because he's so, especially in Germany, that he's a little, I don't know, not well perceived, but I think the last, this book that, I love David Icke, Read the Trap. This is his new book, and I think he himself, and I see that with a lot of people, with a lot of speakers out there, they have evolved in their own consciousness so much. Like David Icke, in this new book, he's still tapping into the negative a lot, but he's more spiritual than ever. So yeah, basically very interesting.
I love that. That is my one thing about David Icke. I love the show, the way the show's presented, because it's really only about reality. His other work does get a bit on the negative side. The Children of the Matrix book is what nightmares are made of. Like, the Children of the Matrix book is literally, you will not sleep at night with all of those stories. But I agree that later in his work, it's actually worth getting into now because it's starting to align more with what we're seeing in other perspectives.
And I'm not judging him, and not at all. I think he's important in the way what he's doing. I don't resonate too much with this negative information. I think it's opening up a world that none of us wants to live in. So basically, we need to keep that in mind, that the more energy we put into, that's my personal belief, the more negative energy or focus we put on the negative, the more energy we put into that. So basically, I love when we can reframe and come to solutions, etc. So yeah, that's mine.
I agree, and I think that's also really important for people who are sharing information that is kind of classified information or unknown, secretive information. That's why I don't really focus on a lot of that stuff. Of course, I read about it. Of course, I know about these things. A lot of times people ask me to talk about certain topics. But like what you're saying is, we're basically then going to feed all of this attention into a timeline that we don't want to create. And I just think it's a really masterful plan, because a lot of the people into this information are super manifestors. They have the power to really create reality. So when you're like a highly spiritually tuned person and you get very sucked into the conspiracy side, you're actually like a super manifester of reality, and you're actually going to be creating a darker reality for everybody.
Manifester, I love that term. That's awesome. Yeah, everyone, you're a super manifester. So join us for the live meditation on 23rd of March. It's going to be awesome.
And I have one last question for you, Tim. On Linda's show, I believe it was Linda's, or maybe it was Regina's, I don't remember, but you were interviewed and you talked a little bit about the sixth dimension kind of being like nothing and everything, or it's like kind of like once you get up to the sixth dimension, it's kind of not what we perceive down on these levels. And what was so interesting is the way you described it sounded very much like the book, The Neverending Story, which is actually, I think, a German book, but it's a German movie. That was the first big budget German movie.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that in that movie, when you were describing it, in that movie, they kind of represent all the different levels of consciousness, because you have like the rock man, the animal people, the plant people, the animal groups are like hive. And then you have like these higher levels of consciousness kind of represented by like Falkor and stuff like that. But what you were saying about the sixth dimension very much, and you said that the sixth dimension is relying on the third dimension's decisions because they're a collective. They can't make the individual decisions. And that's basically the whole point of that book, is that nothing is coming, which is like the sixth dimension. And they need a child in the third dimension to create the reality for the nothingness not to happen. And I don't know if you like that book. I know it's like very German, because that was the first big German movie, big budget German movie that was internationally known. So
it's so true. Interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. I was this little when I read that book. Actually, I know it's at my parents' house. I still have that book, so I don't recall much of it, but I definitely should read it again. It's interesting. I didn't know that. Thank you. And yes, it's German. It's even made in Germany actually, and in Berlin, Babelsberg, I guess they made it there. And you can visit it even. You can go there, and you can. It's almost the small Universal Studios basically. Very, like a very reduced form. That's super cool. Thank you. Interesting. I will read that book.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for doing this again. We will be doing the meditation on the 23rd, and that'll be here on Instagram for everybody who wants to watch. I am in the process of figuring out how to do it on TikTok. Anyone here who wants to come over to TikTok in an hour and be super engaged in my chat so that I can get a stream key, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, maybe let's talk about that transparently and openly so people understand. So basically what we've done is we had this huge mass meditation last time. Thank you so much. We almost reached 11,000 people live. This is like very much. And we had like, I don't know, like over 20 people speakers. Which was a little too much in the way that we technically could handle it. So basically that's what we're trying to improve this time. So we have two groups this time. One group, fabulous Mika, she's in the chat right now. Ismail, he's doing this other group. And we have this group that Jen and me are on. And we're basically doing two different versions of the same meditation. One version is a more open cosmic one, which is the venture into cosmic,
into the
galactic beyond. Thank you. And the group that we're doing is basically influencing the field. So we concentrate in giving the right information into this collective field that we share. So yeah, make sure you join us on March 23rd, and it's going to be awesome. And thank you again so much. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll just be giving everyone some more information about the meditation as it gets closer to it next week. And tune into Tim's channel if you're going to be watching it here, or you're going to tune into Ishmael's if you want to do the Galactic Beyond.
And we're going to do it on TikTok, so tune into Jen's TikTok as well. I'm going to be on TikTok.
That is in the works still, and I feel very confident that it will make it to TikTok.
Thank you, Jen.